Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of our backyard garden in South Carolina, upstate. We just finished our front yard garden tour video. We're going to do our backyard now. It is episode 37 for the year in 2024. It's October 19th. We're getting close to the end of the year, but the weather is still just about perfect. It's, I'm going to say, about 68 degrees, crystal clear sky. Really could not be any nicer weather. And so we're going to start off here. This hillside usually has been a good place to start. Not a whole lot to show off other than these daisies, which are still doing well. I think this is probably the last week that we're going to have much to show with these. They're not a lot of buds. These have been blooming now for 2 or 3 weeks, and they look like they're on the verge of finishing up. So we're going to enjoy those for the time being. Almost all of our cleome through here are done. You can kind of see just the dead stalks. In fact, even the seed pods have fallen off, so I can probably start pulling these out now. I keep them on just long enough so that they can reseed for next year, but I think we're beyond that point where we need to do that. And then, something I don't talk about very often, and it's probably worth a mention since we talk about a garden and the backyard. I don't talk about our grass. And I'm not a grass expert by any means, but we did have somebody come in and aerate our yard this week. And if you look closely, you can see what look like goose droppings everywhere. This is just cores of soil that have been pulled out. If any of you are lawn fanatics, you may already be doing this, but it's a good idea to do every couple of years. A lot of that over in here, and eventually they just break up over the next few months through the winter, and eventually they'll just kind of work their way back down into the soil. But it's good for grass, especially if you're doing it with overseeding, which they did here. It just kind of gives you a fuller grass. And we've had problems with our yard. I've never really talked about this much, but we moved in here 6 years ago, and the previous owners had really done nothing except mowing. They hadn't fertilized, and they hadn't done any weed control. So we have a lot of we certainly have a lot of grass, but it's mixed in with a lot of weedy kind of stuff that doesn't do very well, and it gets to be kind of patchy, and the color's kind of irregular. And I'd like to have a little more typical grassy lawn. So we've done this for the first time this year, and hopefully it'll make a difference next year when the grass comes back. We'll see. It's not terribly expensive. The combination of aeration and overseeding cost $350 from our lawn care person. I think the cost can really vary, especially depending on the size of your yard. We have a ½ acre total, although the amount that's grass is probably 1/4 of an acre. It's not that much, but it's an easy thing to do, and I think hopefully we'll see a nice payoff in the spring. So actually, now 3 minutes into this, we're going to get into our first flowers. These are the cleome. I was talking about these earlier. These are still blooming. These came up later in the year. It's kind of an interesting thing. They once the seeds fall and they start to come up, they are on their own timetable. So unlike a lot of our flowers that will bloom at a specific time every year, these over here, these are all finished up, and yet over here we've got ones that are still blooming as well. It's been an interesting plant in that they can grow just about anywhere. These are coming up out of the bricks in our fire pit here. We've got others that have come up out of the concrete in our driveway. It's very, very hardy sort of seeds. They can get going just about anywhere. As we work our way down through here, a lot of stuff is finished up for the year. Our hydrangeas are done. Not really much to talk about there. Just these big seed pods that'll be around well into next year unless we cut them off. But we do have some other things. Certainly some zinnias still hanging in there, and some vinca doing relatively well. This was given to us by a friend, a kind viewer. Commented on our video a couple weeks ago and said this was celosia, which I would agree with. My understanding of celosia, this is kind of what it looks like. But it's done very well. It's kind of a unique looking little flower, and it has survived not the greatest conditions this year. It's been very dry and very hot from midsummer on, although right now we're into just absolutely perfect fall weather, and I hope it stays that way for a while. A little bit left of our butterfly bushes, these bright purple stalks. Overall, the plant peaked probably 6 weeks ago, but still going to have a little bit of color here until probably our first frost, and then I expect that it'll come to a halt. And then through here we get down into the shadier part of our yard, and I have been so thankful to God and Mother Nature and everybody else that we didn't lose this tree. This is one of the taller trees in the neighborhood. It's probably a good 70 feet tall, and it's just big sturdy oak. Unfortunately, with thousands and thousands, millions of trees are down throughout the state and into North Carolina, and I was afraid we might lose this one, but we didn't, thank goodness. In fact, actually in our yard and our neighbors, we didn't really lose any, including these big evergreens here. These are the ones that are probably at the greatest risk of falling because the evergreens tend to have such shallow roots, but everywhere you look, big trees like this came down with Hurricane Helene about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, and it's just so sad to see trunks and branches just everywhere on the streets still, even now. But here our azaleas doing great. I was commenting to my wife Jenny earlier this morning that these are almost as prolific right now as they were in the spring, and I don't remember getting that in the fall before. They seem brighter and bigger and just healthier. Maybe it's because the plants themselves, the bushes, have gotten bigger. I don't really know. We've got 6 of these back here. All of them have blooms on them. This is probably the one that's covered the most. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and you can see it from the house, which is really nice. And then other things in the garden. Most of the garden is done, has been done for a long time. Daylilies and digitalis and things like that. But we do still have some really nice begonias that have done well. These bright red ones. These have done well all through the year. You could see these from the house. We had some smaller pink ones that didn't do so well. And then our impatiens here are still hanging on. I would say they peaked probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now they're starting to fail. Not because of the temperature, because it has not frozen yet, but they just sort of naturally respond to the shorter days, the reduced light. We saw that in Ohio. They would usually peak and be at their largest, bushy sort of shape right around mid-September, and then it would start to drop off. Now, up there, you'd get your first frost typically in early October, and then they were just completely dead. Here, we're hanging on. It looks like it will be into November before we get a frost, which is nice. Last year, it came a little too early for my liking, and a lot of stuff died off. Here we have another azalea just doing really, really well. And if you look closely at these flowers, they're just absolutely gorgeous. Very, very simple, very basic flowers, but the color is so vibrant and so bright that you can't resist them. Through here, again, some more of the azaleas, but we do have one rose that's still going well. This is one I comment on so often, our multicolored pink and white rose. I don't see any other buds at the moment, so that may be the end of those. When those blooms are finished, we'll see. Some more of the daisies that we saw earlier, and it's kind of a mix of vinca and zinnias through here. A lot of bright red, which is kind of nice. And then some bird is close by and talking to me. I don't know what he's trying to say. I think he's, oh, there I see him hopping around up on the trellis over there, talking to his friends in the neighborhood. But as some of you may have heard, we had a little issue with this knockout rose. Huge thing. It was about 8 feet tall, 8 feet wide. It was the biggest knockout rose that we had in the garden. And about 3 months ago, we had a beaver that had come up in the night and chewed all the major branches off. And at first we thought, oh no, it's dead. But almost immediately it started getting new growth. And if you look closely down there, it's hard to see, but it has a huge base. As long as it has a strong base, especially with these knockouts, you're going to get new growth coming off of them. And in short order, it was blooming again. And it's given us all kinds of colors. So I think by next year, it's going to be back to where it was. You know, along those lines, it just shows how Mother Nature works. All of these irises that you see down here, these were all there, but they were more or less being suppressed by the size of the rose, and they really weren't getting a chance to do anything. And they have really gone crazy. So I think for next spring, we will probably have a ton of iris blooms in this area come March and April. So I'm looking forward to that. Also started to see some buds on our gardenia here, right there. Now these won't bloom until probably January or February. It's a midwinter bloomer, late winter bloomer. Will give us some gigantic red and yellow flowers, which will be really nice. It's gotten big enough that it should have a lot of flowers when the time comes. I don't know if you can see our little bird friends flying around there. I'm not even sure offhand what those are. I'm not a bird expert. But anyway, got some more daisies through here. This is our big climbing rose. And we'll get another view of the trellis here in a couple of minutes. But we've got a big mix up on top of the trellis of climbing roses and jasmine. So it's green all the way across, and getting some nice red blooms on the left side. A week or two ago, we were having a lot of pink blooms on the right side from our pink climber, which I think in this case, this one is about done. I don't see any flowers out on this now. So I think it may have finished up for the year. So we've got a lot of jasmine vines. You can kind of see here. They're everywhere. These do need to be cut back periodically. If you let them go long enough, they will absolutely take over. And we don't want that to happen. We want just a nice balance. Because we also have clematis up in here. You can see this Nellie Moser clematis still in bloom, along with a nice little climber. And another climber here. This one has continued to put out 1 or 2 roses a week. Most times I come by here, it's blooming up pretty nicely. This is our hibiscus. This thing has gotten huge. Unfortunately, it's doing so well that it's concentrating primarily on growth and not flowers. So oddly enough, this one has not put out a lot of flowers this year, although it looks like we have a couple of buds that might open up. I'm not sure. There's one over on the other side, has given us more flowers, but the plant itself has not really done a whole lot this year. It's actually fairly small, but we put it in right at the hottest part of the summer, which was probably in retrospect not a great idea. Got some more interesting things back in here, some nice pink roses, and this other little pink wildflower. I don't know what this is. Anybody who has an idea is welcome to share their opinions, but it's done very well. Just kind of a generic wildflower. And then more zinnias. The zinnias in the backyard definitely are doing better than the ones in the front yard. If you looked at our front yard video, our zinnias, especially out by our mailbox bed, are really looking pretty dead. They have some flowers on them, but they're not exactly thriving. They look like they're really struggling, and they got hit pretty hard with the hurricane. Some of the branches got broken, and they were so tall and spindly, they didn't really stand a chance in all that wind. Here, our butterfly bush is doing great. It's gotten so big, it's taken over a sizable chunk of the garden through here, but it's hard to chop it back. I imagine at some point we'll have to do that. Same thing with this climbing rose. These pink ones, they tend to take over, and at some point we'll have to do some cutting back, but so far we're gonna just let things go and see what happens. Got a few of these bright purple zinnias still. We got these, I think 5 of them at Walmart back in July or even June, and they have just thrived back here. Now, some of the plants died off right around the time of Helene. This area got flooded a little bit, and it was right about that time that these died off, although these have been hanging in there. Some of the other things through here, I think our balloon flowers are done for the year. We have a daylily. One single one that we put in is still hanging in there. It's not going to flower anymore, but the plant itself is doing okay. More zinnias, got some marigolds back here doing very well. And then over here, we have this is kind of interesting thing. We had the beaver issue that I was telling you about. The beavers also came in and ate 3 roses right down to the ground, and 2 of them have come back. This little knockout rose here, the red one, and then this white one. They've come back on a small scale, not in a large way. This is one we put in this year. It's given us a few roses, but it hasn't been overwhelmingly strong. Here we've got some clematis doing pretty well, strangely enough. I don't know that it's going to bloom this year, or this fall, but it's looking very green all of a sudden after being dormant through most of the summer. And then over here we have a wisteria that just keeps struggling. I don't know if it's going to make it or not. And a dahlia, which really has not thrived. It stays alive, but not much else. I always call this our dead zone. It doesn't really do a whole lot, unfortunately, year after year. Back here we have our weeping cherry and another big wisteria. Hard to see because it's so big. That will need to be chopped back because it's been taking over. And certainly these canna need to be chopped back. A lot of work needs to be done maintenance-wise on the garden. You have to really get in there about not necessarily every year, but probably every other or every 3rd year. You need to really get in and chop back things that otherwise will just take over and kind of destroy your garden. Canna is one of those. Jasmine is one of those, and a few other things. Hollies have a tendency to just take over. Having talked about that, the canna, if any of you have been watching these videos through the summer, I've been very underwhelmed by our canna, but these lighter green ones have actually done pretty well. They've given us a fair number of flowers. I'm trying to get this one to bend down a little bit for us. It's a very tropical looking flower. It doesn't come out in huge numbers, but it's enough to make it worth keeping. And they're very low maintenance. Unfortunately, the ones with darker leaves that give us red flowers have not done well here. There are quite a few in our development that have done well, but ours have not, unfortunately. And we've got some more clematis up here growing on the vines up on the fence. That's about it, though, as far as flowers. Down here we have a lot of things that are done. This whole area of terrace here really needs some work. There are canna that should not be growing there. We've got some other things that don't belong there. We just have not been able to get out as much as we would have liked and maintain this. But we've got the main things that we want to keep in this bed are black-eyed Susans, which you can see here. They're long since finished up. Daylilies and irises, and those are the things that will give us a nice continuation of color through the entire growing season from spring all the way into late summer. So we're going to have our work cut out for us next year, and I'm going to show off again. I've shown this a couple of times, but just again to give you an idea of what happened with helicopter there with the hurricane a while back. Our pond is usually at a fairly steady level because there's a dam about 100 yards down to the right, and usually there's about a foot or so between the water line and the bottom of our dock. Well, at the height of the storm, with all the water flooding in, we had, I don't know how much exactly we had, probably 15 inches of rain. The water was up to this level right here, near the top of the bottom of the top railroad tie here, and I'm going to leave that there as a high water mark. But that really shows just how high it was. It was about 3 or 4 feet above where it should have been, and we're not in a floodplain, fortunately, because our house is quite a bit higher than this. But it was a real testament to the power of nature, I'll tell you. And certainly ask anybody up in North Carolina and they'll tell you just how bad it can be. So coming up to the house, we'll finish things up with a quick view up here. Not a whole lot to show. We had some nice purple roses a few weeks ago. They all bloomed at once. They're all done now. Some more vinca. A few tomatoes here. I picked 2 or 3 tomatoes yesterday. A little bigger ones. These are much smaller cherry tomatoes. They don't want to come off. There we go. Well, let's see here. Should be able to get them. Actually, now I'm looking. There are quite a few here. That one's kind of rotten. I'm going to throw that one away. And let's see, we got a few more here. Some really small ones. There we go. And some more of those celosia that we were talking about earlier through here, doing well. And again, roses in different phases of growth. Lavender rose over there, doing well. These marigolds have done extremely well. We would definitely want to get these again. These are all grown from seed. My wife took care of those. Another tomato here, along with the zinnias, all grown from seed. And then we've got these Nellie Moser clematis here. These were as good as finished for the year back in the summer, but here in the fall we're getting a nice secondary bloom, and even some cosmos growing again from seed, giving some nice bright color. And one thing that's worth looking at specifically, this absolutely beautiful lavender rose here with a couple of buds next to it, and then some more of these pink climbers. Not as many as we had earlier in the year, but they're still giving us some nice color. In fact, this one's nicer than usual in that it has that yellow center. A lot of them you don't see that, you just see the pink. This one is kind of a two-tone effect that's really nice. This particular plant has been much more prolific than really just about any of the others. We have 4 of these in the yard, and they do tend to take over, but they've been very very successful. This one has given us more flowers overall. It's really great to see. I think everything back in here is about done, maybe with the exception of these tomatoes are still growing. They probably take another week or two to bloom, or I'm sorry, to redden up, not bloom. Hopefully that'll happen before the first frost. Some more pink climbers way up here on top of the step. You see how long these vines are overall from the base in the ground to up here. This is probably about 15 feet, and they're just doing so nicely. Ultimately, we want to train these to be along the course of the railing here. And just a real quick look at some of the other things that we have. Some of them are kind of finished up, like these morning glories. There were a couple flowers here this morning, but they're done. One pot that has some geraniums. These are the only geraniums that we have. We got these back in May and put them in, and they have done really, really well. Same thing with the petunias and marigolds. The marigolds are all from seed, along with the vinca, just doing wonderfully. More marigolds over here. Again, all from seed, just covered with flowers. They have been very, very happy. And that's about it. So we're gonna go on with our day, and hopefully it is sunny wherever you are. And until next time, happy gardening.